So when will Legion come out, and by extension, how long will we be stuck with patch 6.2? Both are good questions, and with 6.2 being over, and of course there not really being a 6.3, it is safe to say that the current expansion is out of steam until we get the Broken Shore introduction to Legion. There is not really that much to hold people into the game currently, and with an expansion looming, it generally has a bit of a chilling effect on the current endgame because it does feel just that bit more devalued, as is pretty much always the case. Now 6.2 doesn't seem to have helped subscriber numbers that much at all, so we can only assume that the freefall is going to continue until the next expansion picks up speed. This leads us into the main topic of the video. When will the various large sort of Legion events occur? We have the beta, we have BLIZZCON 2015, we have the Broken Shore, and then of course we have the launch itself. We perhaps don't really have as much to go off here because they're doing the right thing and they're playing their cards a little bit closer to their chest in an effort to not overpromise, like they did with Warlords of Draenor. And as much as they or anyone else says they didn't promise anything, well, technically they didn't, but if you say we will have Karabor in front of a ginormous screen with a big crowd, that may as well be. Anyway, first of all, we need to talk about their competition. As much as they say otherwise, they do time various PR-friendly things with major announcements from other games. For an example, Warlords of Draenor's internal alpha, which was also publicly data mineable, wink wink for reasons, came out the same time that ESO did. Currently, we know that Star Wars The Old Republic is coming out in October, and we know that Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns is coming out sometime this year, but we don't know when. Also, patch 6.2 came out the same day as Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward. Hell, while the Warlords of Draenor Alpha technically sort of came out the same day, or whatever, that ESO came out, the playable alpha that subscribers got to go into for Warlords actually came out the exact, well, I think it was 3 days after or before Wildstar came out. I think it was 3 days after. So they definitely do time things. With that stuff in mind, could something happen in October? Well, if we had a beta before BlizzCon, it would, in a way, take the wind out of the event, so I think that's rather unlikely, sort of. I would not be surprised if they talk more about Legion in between now and BlizzCon, as they have said we'll find out more detail in the near future. One example of them doing that was interviewing lead PvP designer Brian Holinka during a Road to BlizzCon arena tournament in which he gave some more details about how PvP is going to work, and if you want to hear about that, it should be the previous video on the channel. Now, they plan on having a chunk of the expansion be playable at BlizzCon, which just leads me to believe that the beta is going to happen right after BlizzCon, and if you think about it, that does completely make sense. I do wonder if they're going to tie beta access or some sort of early access or something like that into pre-orders to sort of bump up the subscription numbers. Hopefully not, that would really damage the quality of the beta, and I'm pretty sure they did something like that with Mists of Pandaria. Was it maybe that people who were in the annual pass got into the beta, or it was something like that anyway. But what they said is that they just ended up, there were so many people in the beta that it was really hard to get good information and good statistics out of people because, well, there was just so many people, it was hard to really get a good picture. Anyway, moving on, the wildcard here is Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns. We don't know a release date yet, and it's probably a bit further off than the Star Wars The Old Republic release date, because that's in October, and, you know, if Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns was going to be coming out that soon, we probably would know at this stage, so perhaps it will come out in November or December. Assuming it's ready and Heart of Thorns was to release in December, then I could definitely see them, like, pushing out the Broken Shore to meet that, or at least trying to do something. Now, if that wasn't the case, then it would at least be a sensible time to announce their plans with the Broken Shore if it was the case that Heart of Thorns came out and they didn't have anything ready to meet it. They could at least give an announcement or something to build up a little bit of hype. So disregarding all that stuff, all we really know is that the beta is this year and the expansion is next year. The WoW movie is releasing on the 3rd of June, and in a recent interview, Tom Chilton said that the date for the expansion isn't really per se set, and it could be before or after the movie. Well, if it's after, then it's a year of patch 6.2, which would be it would be an absolute shame, and it would, I think, pretty much kill the active player base of World of Warcraft. I can't see people doing a full year plus of 6.2. It would essentially be Siege of Orgrimmar version 2, lasting for 12 months rather than 14, and Mists of Pandaria had a lot more stuff to lean on than this expansion does. Though, I almost get the impression that Tom was like, yeah, you know, it could be before, it could be after, we don't really know. He was being a bit off the cuff, not really being super serious about things, and perhaps, because I think the most we have of that is a text transcription, or, you know, overview, that we're not really getting his actual tone, which could have said quite a bit. So if it were to come out before the Warcraft movie, let's say at the start of May, then things would start to make a bit more sense. The pre-patch would likely be 1 to 2 months before the expansion's release, though if Broken Shore is going to be as large as they say it will be, in terms of the events that affect the entire world, then I can see them stretching it out to 2, or even 2.5 months. This would put the pre-patch being somewhere in and around March of next year. And if the pre-patch was in March, and we had maybe 5 months of beta testing to precede that, then the hype train, or, you know, whatever PR term you want to use, for Legion would actually be starting up pretty close to where we are now. Even though there wouldn't be a lot of in-game content, there would at least be news and buzz going on, which I guess is a little bit more than what we had with Siege of Orgrimmar, but still, not a great situation. Overall, if I was betting, I would say the most realistic way for things to be is major news and announcements at BLIZZCON, because we do know there are some features they haven't really talked about because they're not 100% sure about them. Then a beta right after BLIZZCON, a pre-patch in Q1 of 2016, and a release in Q2 of 2016. What I think would be ideal for the game, though, is maybe a beta at BLIZZCON, or limited beta before BLIZZCON, or just a, you know, beta at BLIZZCON as we would have expected. Then I would really love it if Broken Shore came out before the end of the year, and the expansion released in Q1 2016. I think that plan is what's best for the number of subscribers this game has, because right now, that number's in freefall, and they need to plug the gap, and assuming the expansion was ready and was of a very good quality, I think that would be okay. Obviously, if waiting 3 months and releasing in Q2 2016 means that we don't get another Warlords of Bloody Draenor, then you know what? Do that, because as the infinitely quotable Miyamoto quote goes, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad. And as much as you can try to plug the leak with patches, in many cases, the damage is already done. So there are my predictions for the next just under a year. I suppose, honestly, I think that seems pretty reasonable to me that we'll get a Q2 launch. Earlier would be nice, but if they make this Broken Shore thing good enough, then perhaps it will all work out fine and the player base will be satisfied. But anyway, that is it for me. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you next time.